Hey, Caitlin. Hey
Ellen.
there.
Hello, I am here.
So
Ready?
I'm not the host.
Yes, so these are set up by Deanna or Rumi. I'm not sure. So once they join, they should be able to make us host of the session or at least co-host.
Okay. We
Um, I saw
don't.
I saw Deanna in the elevator too. This is recording. Okay, yeah. So I saw Deanna in the elevator too, and I asked how many folks normally come. She said anywhere from 60, 80, 100 somewhere. Um, so she does know I'm coming. And I said that we're excited about today. And she said she'll join a few minutes early. So it was just happenstance that I saw her. So
Cool.
yeah,
Cool.
so I think we should be ready. I have the action plan up and running. I've got that here in case someone needs it. I'll also download a copy just in case, but I know it's attached to their Outlook for this call. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the Qualtrics links ready. So when we get to that section, they'll see it on your screen, they'll see it in their action plan, but I'll also post the links in the chat. And then I will get into Qualtrics. So once we have the results mostly in, I'll plan to pop the questions if we get any into a Word document and I'll send them over to you while they're kind of doing their thing. And that way, when we get to the end of the session, we can do an open forum Q&A and I can kind of just read off questions to you, things like that.
Okay.
So I think we should be good. Oh, and look, we got the memo on the matching cups today.
Oh, nice. Very
Yeah.
nice.
This is my husband's technically, but we got it for free because I'm not paying $60 for a water bottle, but technically it is a true Stanley. Um,
Nice.
but we got it for free. So
Very nice. We
Mhm.
seem to have collected too many over time, but you can't get rid of them because that's a good mug. But we have enough to, I don't know, could probably have a party of 30 people over here and everybody have their own mug. All right.
Yeah, so we should be ready. So yeah, I am
Did
here.
you heard the music when you joined?
I did. Yep, I could hear that. So we should be good. I don't know if Deanna is going to start off the session with announcements or anything. So when she joins, you might want to ask her if they want to start with music. If they don't, we're ready either way. But I don't know if she does any sort of formal announcement and introductions before content. I don't know that piece.
Okay.
Yeah, we're here. We can just hang out.
Yeah.
And they do it looks like they record these too. So we are actively recording. So I think they publish them um, on their site or something internally. So who is ever editing this, hello and thank you. When they get to that point.
Thank you for removing this part.
Yes, thank you for editing out this part. We appreciate it. So yeah.
I really appreciate you moderating because that
Yeah.
number is bound to have, well, at the very least, it's also an HR group, right? So we would expect, um, you know, human to human interaction, not a problem in HR.
Hmm.
Our fellow HR folks. So,
Yeah, no, I like this community a lot. I think it's probably, I mean, there's probably an aspect to me that feels very comfortable because it was my undergrad, my MBA emphasis. It's just an area that I feel really, and I did it for several years, so I just feel really comfortable in this community. And I think it's a community that I'm so happy that they get dedicated time for training and learning and growth, because I think it's
mm,
an easy population to sometimes miss. Um,
yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
happy that they get so many things, and we have the HR program, and they do things like this internally. I think it's a value add for sure. But yes, you are welcome. I'm happy to be here. I hope I can be helpful. Um, but it should be fun. And I haven't watched this since we did it with Department of Medicine. So it'll be good for me to see it because I've got another group that's interested in doing this at some point in the next like 2 months, but I don't have a date yet. So it's a good refresh for me.
I made a couple of minor changes, so I probably need to upload a new
Okay.
version.
That would be great.
Just because you remember there's a point where we're like sort of banging away on the 7-second pause drum. I've
Mhm.
swapped that out for something else
Okay.
in the three example slides, so it's not giving the advice in a bullet and then immediately giving the advice in a bullet again.
Yes.
Um, I've changed it out for noticing negative self-talk, which is actually a
Mm,
thing that I use a lot as a coach. So
okay.
um, that's one I can talk to. And then there's one other thing. Anyway, I'll upload the new version.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I was gonna ask you anyway, so that's awesome. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
there's always a little, a couple of like that doesn't, you know what I'm saying? It's like that part of the road's always a little clunky,
Mm-hmm.
and you do it enough times, you're like, that's
Yep.
a
Yeah,
that's a pothole. There's a pothole there. I need to fill that pothole in.
that
So,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I don't know where I was going with the rest of that statement. I'm not going anywhere with the statement.
How does this compare with Debbie's? Didn't Debbie just do a
Yes,
R&D press?
it is different. You're gonna get to see it at Gates because I think it's actually the first session. So Katie and I were here today getting stuff printed and laminated and getting everything ready for the first day. Um, So we're ready. We did it. We got it all ready. Yay.
Oh,
But you'll get to see it. It's different. So in this context, and even the context of your current general program, we focus it on Goldman, we focus on the four quadrants, things like that. That one, it's kind of interwoven, but it's more case study practicing, more like not role plays, but case studies. And then they do an EQ assessment that actually gives them context for do they tend to be more focused in on, and I have it actually right here. Hold on. If they tend to be more, it's not about necessarily four quadrants. It gets more into this this model. I wasn't as familiar with it, so it's a good learning experience for me. Um, reflect basically plots you into four quadrants: more reflective, more conceptual, more organized, and more empathic. And so it plots you in those different spaces, and it's basically giving you a sense of, do you tend to be more controlled? Do you tend to be more outcomes focused, more focused in on experiential, or more belief oriented? And then it has some aspects of left brain and right brain in there too. So it's very different.
yeah.
Oh, there's Deanna.
Hi.
Hey, Deanna.
Hello.
We got on early, so you'll get to hear us if you're editing this video. We make a little joke about someone having to edit this part out, but
Oh,
we did if you're
I'll
early.
pause. Thanks for joining us today. Today we have Alan Abbott and Caitlin Norris from Employee Learning and Development, and they're going to talk to us about emotional intelligence. So I will turn it over to Alan.
All right. Thank you, Deanna. I appreciate that. I'm really happy to be here. Welcome, everybody. We'll be covering today, as she mentioned, is emotional intelligence. EQ, I'm sure you've heard of it, but it isn't just a buzzword. It's a practical, research-backed framework that the best leaders use to build trust, resolve conflict, and create healthy teams. The best part about it, and sort of the focus of this class, is that it's something you can get better at starting today. You can actually practice and improve your EQ. So, whether you lead one person, a group, or you're just aspiring to lead, this session is about how you show up in the eyes of the people that rely on you. My name is Alan Abbott. I joined CU Anschutz in June of 23. So I'm about 2 years into my tenure here at CU. Before that, I spent 15 years or so serving in senior leadership businesses, chief operating officer roles in B2B, B2C financial services. And just saying that bores me. So that kind of explains why I'm here with you today. I'm one of the people that during the pandemic decided I wanted to take my life in a different direction. And so I got a master's in organizational development, became an executive coach, and got certified as a Clifton Strengths coach. So those three things together is pretty much what I do here on campus. I serve as a consultant helping teams, with their strategic planning or creating custom courses for people. With me today is the amazing Caitlin Norris. I'm going to let Caitlin introduce herself.
Hi, Alan. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for hosting us today. As Alan said, my name is Caitlin Norris. I recognize many of you from other classes, from our cohort-based programs. So this is such a community that we enjoy really being a part of. So thank you for allowing us that time and space to be here this afternoon. So as Alan said, I will also be in a quasi-facilitator, but also really a true moderator capacity today. We've got a lot of you on the call. We've got a really big group, and we want you to be very engaged and very active in today's discussion. So there's definitely going to be a mix of lecture, but we're also going to challenge you to add things to the chat. I will read those off, support Alan in that space. We do not have any breakout rooms today, so you don't necessarily need to worry about that, but we will challenge you to be active in the chat, ask lots of questions. We will also have an assessment built into today's session as well, where we will also do a live Q&A at the end of the content. So if you do have questions submitted throughout today, we'll try to catch those at the very end, and I'll help facilitate a live Q&A with Alan in this topic. So again, happy to be here, happy to be Alan's co-pilot today. If you need anything, please feel free to send me a private chat. Otherwise, thank you for being here, and we are excited to talk about emotional intelligence. Alan, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate it. So to kick things off, I want to start by saying we're not here to overwhelm you with a bunch of theory. This is not a theory-only session. We're here to build awareness and give you the practical tools you can use to act on what you learn. You're going to start with a general overview of EQ, including the 4 key aspects of emotional intelligence. And as we explore this topic, I'm going to share some examples and some tips you can start using right away to strengthen your EQ. Next, we're going to discuss some common leadership missteps that erode trust. And finally, we'll wrap up the session by walking you through a simple 7-day action plan to help you get started strengthening your EQ today. We like to, how did you get this information? We like to cite our sources. So we're going to give them actually a large spotlight here. The primary source for today's presentation is the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0. A lot of you probably have it on your shelves. It's by Dr. Travis Bradbury and Dr. Gene Greaves. This is a best-selling book that provides a practical approach to developing EQ through 4 core skills that we're going to refer to as the core 4. So each copy of EQ 2.0 also includes a code you can use for a free EQ assessment. We're going to be giving you a free one today that you can utilize. So if you have the book, or if you go out and buy the book, you can save that for somebody, right? It's a code that allows you to take an online assessment with them. And it helps you understand where your growth opportunities are. That allows you to personalize your growth and track your improvement when you're building your EQ. In case you want additional or more targeted resources from this duo, we suggest Team Emotional Intelligence 2.0, which expands on the original concept of emotional intelligence and those principles from the first book, but applies it to teams and how we can basically build EQ collectively. This helps us transform, collaborate, improve decision-making, etc. It offers tools to measure and build team-level skills in emotional awareness and regulation. And then we have Emotional Intelligence Habits, which focuses on the power of small, consistent behaviors. And this book helps readers build lasting habits that improve emotional intelligence. We're also going to tap into the wisdom of Dr. Daniel Kahneman and his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, that explains both how fast intuition and slow reasoning jointly drive our judgments, biases, and decisions. And finally, throughout the presentation, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Daniel Goleman. Dr. Goleman's a clinical psychologist, researcher, and New York Times best-selling author. He earned a PhD in clinical psychology at Harvard University. And in 1993, he co-founded the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning at Yale University's Child Studies Center. In addition, Dr. Goleman was a science journalist at the New York Times until 1996, covering psychology, emotions, and the brain. He was twice nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, and in his spare time, he wrote the intentionally best-selling book, Emotional Intelligence, which spent more than a year and a half on the New York Times bestseller list. So I tell you all of that because I want to imprint upon you that Dr. Goleman knows a thing or two about a thing or two. Obviously, there's a large body of work out there. We've got a lot of books that we're citing here, and they are very similar in a lot of ways. So the research is kind of coalesced around these concepts. You see a lot of similarities in the different books, but we're using this set of resources to talk to you today. According to Emotional Intelligence 2.0, a staggering 90% of top performers have high EQ scores. That doesn't mean IQ or technical skills aren't important, and they most certainly are. But when it comes to team performance, morale, and long-term success, EQ is often the differentiator. In academic research and training environments where the stakes are high and the teams are small and specialized, your ability to lead with empathy and self-awareness and clarity can either inspire people or quietly drive them out the door. A 2024 poll by LinkedIn Market Research showed that roughly 70% of US workers say they would quit due to a bad manager. What we're going to cover today isn't a secret. Even if you know a lot about EQ, how we strengthen and expand our emotional intelligence is a little bit less well known. You may have read a book about it, but how do you build it is a whole different story. And so that's what we're hoping to focus on with you today. By the end of today, we hope to have hope you have both the tools and the motivation to start improving your EQ. To get started, we're going to hear from Dr. Goldman on the basics of EQ and how it might show up at work.
You know, in the future, I think emotional intelligence will be one of several abilities that we need. Another, of course, is cognitive ability, IQ, and maybe AI will take over more and more of that. However, emotional intelligence is a human ability and will always remain so. IQ predicts how well you'll do in your school years and how much salary you can make over the course of a career, because it says what job you can get into, like being a business executive or a doctor or a lawyer. But once you're in those professions, everybody else is about as smart as you are. That's where emotional intelligence kicks in. People who emerge as outstanding performers or the best leaders have high emotional intelligence, and their IQ is not that relevant at that point. You know, I've gone around the world talking to different audiences, and one of the things I love to ask is, tell me about a leader you've loved and a leader you hate. And tell me one quality that makes the leader so good or so bad. Basically, the leader you hate is low in emotional intelligence. They don't manage their emotions very well. They blow up at people, don't empathize, they don't tune in, they don't understand how clueless they are. The leader you love is high in it. Having a boss with high emotional intelligence means you feel not only inspired, not only motivated, you feel supported, you feel guided, you feel you have clarity about what's expected from you. You give your best in your best state, in the optimal state, not in a desperate, stressed out state. But if you have a leader that you hate, for example, and sadly too many people do, then you really don't give your best. In fact, you're more likely to leave as soon as you can, particularly if you're talented. So a leader with low emotional intelligence is actually draining the organization in the long term. They may get results for the quarter by driving people, by stressing them out, but they're burning them out and they're going to lose good people. So in the short term, they may look good. In the long term, it's a disaster.
Right. To be clear, what we're talking about today isn't about being nice. While it can have that impression, it's about the lasting emotional imprint that leaders leave on their people, as well as the impact that those imprints leave on the team, department, or the company. So just how important is emotional intelligence? Clearly, it has some significant impacts, but we're going to dig into a few. Emotional intelligence isn't just a nice-to-have soft skill. It's been tested against 33 other key workplace abilities, and researchers found that it essentially trumps most of them. Things like time management, decision-making, and communication. When I first read those, I was like, okay, hold on, right? This isn't to say that having high EQ but being a terrible decision maker, instant success. That's not what we're talking about. What we have to think about is what acts on what. Does EQ influence our decision making, or does decision making influence our EQ? EQ is essentially the connection that guides our behaviors. In fact, the research shows that emotional intelligence is responsible for up to 58% of performance in all kinds of jobs. And it's not just for people like our friends in HR. And by the way, that is absolutely written in here. So I just want to say that. I wrote that. Our friends in HR, right? It's across the board. So it isn't just for our HR friends. And here's where it gets even more interesting. If you're not into the whole people side of things, people with high EQs tend to earn more money on average, about $29,000 more per year than those with lower EQs. That's not a theory, it's an actual financial impact backed by data. Moreover, these numbers hold up across industries, roles, and continents. Emotional intelligence consistently shows up as a key success factor, no matter where you work or what your title is. So if you've ever questioned if EQ is worth investing in, let me assure you it is. It pays off in performance, in leadership impact, and yes, it could even pay off in your paycheck. So now that we've learned a little bit about why EQ is worth developing, let's take a look at the key aspects of emotional intelligence. Super easy to mix up IQ, personality, and emotional intelligence, since, after all, each influences how we show up, but they're fundamentally different, and the difference matters. IQ is your raw intellectual horsepower. It includes your ability to reason, analyze, and grasp complex ideas. It remains mostly stable across life, and while crucial for learning and analytical tasks, it doesn't reliably predict emotional skills. Personality is your internal wiring or style, the stable preference and tendencies that define how you naturally respond to the world. Like IQ, your core personality traits tend to remain consistent over time, influencing your comfort zones and interaction styles. And then we have EQ. It represents your ability to identify, understand, and manage emotions, both yours and those of others. And crucially, unlike IQ and personality, EQ is flexible. It can be deliberately developed and strengthened through intentional practice. So IQ, personality, and EQ don't neatly predict each other. Someone brilliant intellectually isn't automatically emotionally skilled, just as a charismatic personality doesn't guarantee a strong emotional insight. Each trait independently contributes to your effectiveness, but EQ stands out again because it's directly actionable. So, have you ever blurted something out and then had that sort of cringe feeling that comes over you? That snap response is your amygdala doing its millisecond threat scan. Every sound, tone, or facial cue routes through the limbic system before logic joins the party. This is helpful if a bear shows up, but less helpful in staff meetings. The prefrontal cortex kicks in a beat later, giving us room to label feelings, weigh options, and choose a better reply. This explains why we often have a gut reaction or emotional impulse before we have time to think logically. If we skip that prefrontal cortex pause, the amygdala basically grabs the mic and goes to town. You never know what you're going to get with that. So, Dr. Kahneman actually describes these as pathways of System 1 and System 2 thinking. Sorry about that. So System 1 is the automatic system. It runs on mental models and heuristics, which are useful most days, but risky when stereotypes or framing biases creep in. An example would be the times when you instinctively trust a familiar logo without checking any of the details. You can think of this as the always-on network, but unlike Netflix, it does not check to see if you're still watching. System 2 is the reflective system. This system is your analytical muscle. It slows the scroll, so to speak, and reads the fine print and asks, is this really safe? The hitch is that System 2 burns glucose and attention, so the brain kind of tries to default to System 1 whenever possible, saving energy effectively. So high EQ leaders learn to catch that pause, and in that moment, they invite System 2 to the table so they can respond instead of react. The funny thing about how these systems work is that we assume most of the things we do are purely conscious decisions made by System 2, when in fact, almost everything we consciously decide on is based on some sort of automatic reaction and suggestions fed to us by System 1 holding tightly onto that mic. So if heading off your amygdala before you react sounds impossible, I don't know if I'll ever catch that pause, we've got some good news for you. Emotional intelligence is trainable. EQ is not about suppressing emotion. It's about recognizing it early enough to choose your response. It's about catching that pause. That's a skill, and like any skill, you can get better with practice. So how exactly do we train our brain? For that, we need to dive into the concept of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to adapt and change in response to repeated thoughts and behaviors. Think about habits and reactionary behavior like a car that gets stuck in a snow rut. You're stuck in that path. Your car goes where the ruts go, and that may be into an emotional ditch. Neuroplasticity tells us that we can rewire our brains, which means cutting a new path. I'm gonna try to do something differently, and I'm gonna do it enough that I start to build new ruts that go in a better direction, the direction I want my car to go when I hit that, what happens now, the automatic response. Right now, we're going where our reactions have taken us in the past. And if those aren't good, we need to try and cut new roads. Practicing self-awareness and emotional regulation can feel uncomfortable at first, but it gets easier over time. With consistent effort, you can change how you react, decide, and relate to others. You can hear me refer to, comparing this to like going to the gym. The first few times you go, it may be uncomfortable. You're sore afterwards. It doesn't quite feel natural. But after a while, you know exactly what you're doing, right? So if we're going to apply consistent effort, it's going to be helpful for us to know how to target those workouts. Like training specific muscles, the core four of emotional intelligence is a quick way for us to describe the internal and external areas of focus in our EQ work. In this next segment, Dr. Goldman will talk about the building blocks of EQ and how they apply in every interaction you have, whether you're leading a team or navigating stress on your own.
I was a big advocate of what's now called social emotional learning. And from early on, my view of emotional intelligence hasn't really changed much, but I integrated it with findings from research on outstanding performers. And I saw that different abilities of high performers, like being able to manage your emotions, fit well in the model. And now I talk about 4 domains of emotional intelligence, and then 12 particular competencies of people who are high in emotional intelligence.
All right, before we dive into the core four, we want to provide an opportunity for everybody on this call today to get a quick read on where you are in terms of EQ right now. I want you to think about, going back to the gym analogy, I want you to think about this as that sort of fit assessment they do when you go to the gym, right? We're going to see where you're at. And like that, it isn't a total assessment. It's not trying to, determine everything that's wrong with you or right with you. This is just a glimpse to help guide your efforts. It's a free Qualtrics-based EQ assessment is offered with this course. You should be able to complete this on your phone or laptop. Again, this is created by and sponsored, hosted on CU servers. So it is an internal document, basically. You can find the survey on page 10 of your action planner. And if the links don't work, you can copy and paste the URL at the bottom into your browser and just go from there. So think of this as a quick snapshot of how well you recognize and regulate your own emotions, plus a glimpse of how you read other people. It's more of a Snapchat, EQ Snapchat, or a Polaroid, not a full studio portrait. Because the survey is brief, it's not meant to diagnose every nuance of emotional intelligence, but it can help us surface patterns, areas that I need to work on, right? That's what we're looking for. Maybe you already excel at self-awareness, but struggle with empathy, or vice versa. Those insights, the insights that you get from this assessment can help you determine how you're going to focus your efforts when we get to that part of the exercise. So doing this assessment is completely optional, but we do recommend it. Or use some assessment, like we said in the back of the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book. You can go that route as well. And finally, for those with any kind of test-taking anxiety, there are no right or wrong answers. So when choosing your response, just go with what feels right and keep rolling. So if you're ready, go ahead and open the link. We're going to take about 10 minutes. It doesn't usually take 10 minutes, but we want to give everybody plenty of room. So we will come back at 1:33. 1:33. Any questions? Not seeing any questions. I'm going to turn on a little background music because I hate silence, even though I've been trained to sit and listen. Let's take our EQ assessment. If anybody missed an opportunity, you can always access it after the class, and frankly, you can take it anytime you want. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and move on to cover the core four. So we've gained some insights into your EQ. And now we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into each one of these core 4 areas. First, self-awareness. Second is self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. 2 of these are about understanding yourself, and 2 are about navigating relationships. Think of it a little bit like learning to drive, where self-awareness is realizing you're veering off course, self-management is gently steering back, social awareness is noticing how your driving is affecting others on the road, and relationship management is being considerate of other drivers. So we're going to go ahead and look at the 4 domains of emotional intelligence, and Dr. Goleman's going to kick us off with self-awareness.
Self-awareness means you know what you're feeling, you know how it shapes your perceptions and your thoughts and your impulse to act. We find in our research that people low in self-awareness are unable to develop strengths very well in other parts of emotional intelligence. People who are high in self-awareness, however, are able to develop excellence across the board.
All right. So each one of these we're gonna pause and ask a question, open it up to chat. And the question for self-awareness is, when you're stressed, what's your most common emotional default mode? I'll start with, I get short. I get really short with my responses when I'm under stress. How about you? You can come off mute or you can type it in the chat. Reactive. Yeah, reactive.
I know for me, I'm a lot less social with others.
Yep, I'm there too. So I'm quick to respond, but I'm also a few words, right? And maybe not respond. Napping, I love that one. I guess I wish that would be my default mode. Maybe it is. On edge, tendency to get quiet. Yep, shutting down, being short and quiet. Want to be alone. Darla, love that. Take a step back and observe what the real trigger is. That's an EQ practice. You're already doing it. That's actually great. Catastrophizing. Yeah, starting to spin like, all the ways this could go wrong, right? Excellent. Yeah, those are all what we see in there is a lot of responses, but they kind of fall into buckets. We all have, responses. None of them are right or wrong, although there are a few really great strategies in there, I might add. The thing is, it's that sort of natural reaction, that default thing that happens. Well, self-awareness is ground zero for emotional intelligence. This is one of the most important, if you ask me. This is sort of the foundation. It's the ability to recognize your emotions in real time and know how they're showing up in your behavior. For example, if a team member misses a deadline, do you feel irritated, anxious, disappointed? How does that appear, right? So we're gonna be talking about our relationship management, social awareness, all that. But knowing in yourself what your response is the first step. Do I have a specific response? Do I have a default reaction when these kinds of things happen? The emotion you feel might change how you respond, whether you check in calmly or snap without realizing it. So grasping that sort of self-awareness, what am I feeling right now, is pretty powerful. And no matter what, avoid going through the day on autopilot. As Dr. Goleman says, if you're tuned out of your own emotions, you will be poor at reading them in other people. That kind of makes sense, right? So if I'm not paying attention to what I'm feeling, I'm probably glossing over or ignoring some cues that I could pick up. At the end of each of the core 4, we're going to offer you a few examples of actions you can take to strengthen this aspect of your EQ. These are sample actions that we've taken from, or they're very similar to the ones in your action planner. So you'll notice in the action planner, we've given you sort of a menu of things to choose from. This is basically, hey, let me offer a few things, with your exercises, right? So with self-awareness, we can start with, say, one simple habit. Observe your emotions as they happen, without rushing to fix or explain them. The act of just observing, right? And just kind of naming what you're feeling gives you more power than you might expect. Several of the things we're going to be talking about, if you've heard of the Hawthorne effect, it's when you basically you tend to change the behavior by observing the behavior. So this kind of falls into that bucket, and you're going to see a few more of those in here. Second option, we might reflect on one moment that challenged us in that day. So when you review with curiosity instead of judgment, patterns begin to emerge. And the third small action we might be able to take, don't avoid discomfort. Try to stay present with it. And the more you do, the more insight and control you'll build over time. Next, we have self-management. So moving into the actions we're going to take with the observations we've made about ourselves.
Self-management means when you're upset, when you're angry, when you're anxious, can you manage your emotions? Can you keep them from disrupting your focus on what you have to do right now? We're having more instances of road rage, of shootings, of people blowing up at other people. There's a growing need for people in general to get better at this ability.
I think we can probably all agree that's an understatement. But for us, what we're considering here, what's one recurring situation where your reaction always gets often gets the best of you? So in other words, you're always responding in some way that's maybe not ideal. For me, I would not do well in New York honking at me. I get a little testy when people honk at me. So that's my response, and I don't like it, right? But what do you guys, what's one reoccurring situation that puts you in that space where situations getting the best of you? Yelling or raised voices. I would concur with that as well. Let's keep it down here somewhere. Well, that's having three toddlers while trying to cook dinner. I think you deserve whatever reaction you're having. But my dad, okay, yeah. Passive aggressiveness, dealing with my ex, tapping and clicking persistently, dog barking, bad service at a restaurant. Yeah. Yelling and having outside interferences, passive aggressiveness. Costco on Sunday. There it is. Yes. It's always a situation. Costco, yes. Mean people, mean or rude people. Partner asking when the food will be. And bully drivers, yeah, all those. Yeah, I mean, we all have different situations, and we probably share a lot of situations. I'm not laughing because I think the answers are silly. I'm like, yeah, I forgot about that one. Costco on a Sunday for sure. So, there are always going to be things that go on in our life, and there's going to be things that just trip that trigger right away. So what we're talking about is that when we talk about self-awareness, it's how do I respond in these situations? What's my reaction? And then when we get into this level, it's what can I do to try and pause that reaction, right? Self-management is about discipline, not in the rigid, cold sense, but in the ability to respond on purpose sense. When you get an email that triggers frustration, do you react or do you respond? Do you type a reply right away or do you breathe and reflect and reframe? You've all probably heard of this, the golden rule, the 7-second pause. When you feel triggered, stop and count to 7. Ask yourself, this is the important second part of this. 7 seconds seems like an eternity when you're mad or upset or scared, anything else. 7 seconds seems like a long time. So it sounds like it's short, but it is actually quite long. When you finish that 7 seconds, though, ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want here? Remember, your brain loves shortcuts. So your brain's trying to get you to some resolution, and it may not be the one you want. EQ is about slowing down enough to override those knee-jerk responses. And what are some things we might possibly do? Remember, these are all designed, if you've ever heard of or read the book Atomic Habits, this is the kind of concept we're trying to practice here. Nothing is going to be massive. We're not, as they say, boiling the ocean, right? We're not trying to do too much in a very short period of time. Little bitty steps. The first one, and one that I found most powerful in coaching, is when we consciously try and notice instances of negative self-talk. That is often one of the first things I'll do if somebody's having, they're having self-doubt, imposter syndrome, things like that, is I'll ask them just to observe how many times you engage in negative self-talk today, right? And what you find is they'll come back and say, more often than not, I started observing it, but it really dried up after I noticed it a few times. Again, Hawthorne effect, right? So they're observing something and it is actually kind of changing their behavior. Hey, maybe I don't deserve that. Second, visualize win-win outcomes. So before you enter, if you're having a tough conversation or planning a tough conversation, imagine how you want it to go and what success would look like for everyone involved. Start by, trying to understand what winning looks like to another person. This is absolutely peak EQ. It's considering someone else. And finally, you might try taking care of your brain-body connection. I hear this a lot. There's a lot of burnout, the talk of burnout. You guys in HR, you're hearing it, I'm sure. But the one thing is that we have this tendency to keep burning, even though we know we're on fire, right? So sleep, hydrate, move, and encourage your team to do the same. If you're tired, you're probably irritable. And it's going to be very difficult to engage in positive EQ behaviors when basically your body's working against you. Next, we're going to pivot to looking inward to our awareness and interactions with the external world.
The third part is social awareness, which in one sense means practicing empathy. You not only know how the person thinks and how they feel, you care about them. This is what you want in your parents. This is what you want in your spouse. This is what you want in your lover. This is what you want in your friends. And this is what you want in your teachers, doctors, leaders of any kind, people who have influence.
And we have a comment, and I absolutely love, I'm going to pause to read it. When I have a negative voice in my head, I ask myself, would I say something like that to someone I love? And it helps me be nicer to myself. Perfect, right? That's absolutely true. We are our worst enemies a lot of times, right? I would never let anybody talk about me like I talk about me, kind of thing, right? So great advice, great advice. So for social awareness, this is when we're looking outward. I'd like reflections on how can you tell when your team member is disengaged or discouraged? And a little bitty sub question, what if they say they're fine? So you're checking. Hey, you all right? No, I'm fine. I try to always go to don't tell myself stories, assume best intentions. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Distancing, dismissive. Okay, that's Dan saying, well, it depends on who's telling me I'm fine. True. We have different relationships with different people, and we can maybe explore that more comfortably with certain people more than others. Withdrawn. Yeah. It's some of the things we mentioned earlier, right? How do you respond when you're in this situation under stress, right? So some of those are showing up here. Impatient, investigate if it's someone close, right? They're disengaged, short and quick responses, right? Getting curt, getting quiet. Body language, absolutely, right? They may not have to say anything. If they say they're fine, let them know that you're here for them and if they need to talk. Perfect. Great advice, Avery. Right? Sometimes it's not, I'm not going to invade your space. Again, a little coaching thing that they trained early on, which is sit in silence. I know when I went to go get certified as an executive coach, I was like, I am going to make it rain answers around here. It is going to be, I'm going to just give all the advice that I have. And the first class was be quiet. Your job is to be quiet and to open space for them to talk. So love that. When I sense it, I text them wellness check. Oh, that's great. I've heard some advice, different. I think Simon Sinek, I heard a thing. He had a piece about asking for 2 minutes. Was their code? Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you. So social awareness is about your ability to read the room, right? It's tuning into what's not being said. We saw that in a lot of our comments, right? We're looking for cues that may not be verbal cues. And it means picking up on subtle cues, emotional cues, practicing empathy, and listening with more than just your ears. Paying attention to tone, body language, and timing. Because, in emotionally intelligent teams, we don't wait for people to speak up. We notice when something's off and we check in. I also love some of the great advice for how to check in softly, kind of around the edges without pushing too much. Wonderful. So, what are some quick ways we can start building social awareness? First, again, watch body language and tone. You guys are already on top of that. People often reveal more through their gestures and pauses and facial expressions than they do with their words. In fact, in the class I teach, Communicating as a Leader, we actually go through some data, and I think it's something like 7% of communication is with words. The rest of it is all the other things. It seems weird, but I think it was the International Listening Society actually did a study, and that was data that they came up with. So, second option might be to practice active listening. This is always a powerful thing, reflecting back what you hear, pause before responding. Again, that sitting in silence is huge. So, reflecting back what you hear, give them space after you do that. It's a simple way to show respect and create clarity. The third option might be to seek feedback on your blind spots. Right? This is a tough one. This may be a challenge for a lot of us, right? It's a challenge for anybody to say, "Hey, I want you to tell me what I'm doing wrong." I'm going to go out and I'm going to go out and proactively find out what I'm doing wrong. But it is incredibly powerful and trust building. You might ask, "What am I missing?" Because assumptions can quietly erode trust if left unchecked. And finally, relationship management.
The fourth part of emotional intelligence is relationship management. Can you handle conflicts well? Can you keep yourself calm and listen to the other person? Are you being an effective communicator? Full rapport means that you feel close, you feel you can work with this person, you can trust them.
So, the question for relationship management, think of someone you manage or someone you work with if you don't manage anybody currently. What's one small way you could build more trust this week? For me, I set out at the beginning of the week to thank somebody for something they did that went above and beyond. This person doesn't get a whole lot of thanks necessarily on our team because their job is one of those, it's a lot of logistics and processing. But she absolutely, the information she provided me in 2 sentences made everything I was going to do after that 1,000 times easier. And it set me up so that I wasn't going to have this, oh, I got to redo this later. She was giving me all kinds of details. Absolutely went out of my way to thank her for that. So, thoughts, one small way you could build trust this week. Learn something new about a colleague, so that way they know you want to know them on a personal level. Excellent, excellent. Follow up, huge. Not following up, not doing that can be one of those triggering things, right? So, absolutely. Get back to people in a timely manner. Those things kind of come together. Follow up and do it in a timely manner. All right. So, in this sense, I want you to imagine a fictional space between you and another person. And that space is held for a wall. For those we trust 99% of the time, the wall only has a few bricks, right? Maybe you trust people 100%, there are no bricks there at all. That's probably very few people, but your very, very closest friends, maybe there's nothing in between. But a few bricks is really usually about as small as it gets. Trust building moments come along, right? So we have these opportunities, something like a quick check-in, a genuine thank you, right? Some sort of positive gesture that pulls bricks out of the wall and creates openings that allows us to interact more freely. Conversely, missteps like dismissive comments, missed commitments, not following up, these add bricks and raise the barrier. So over time, small choices decide whether we're putting bricks on the wall or taking the bricks off the wall. This is a concept I use with a lot of people. Like, this is also taking everything we're doing and saying, I don't have to do these massive things. I don't have to push the wall over. Not likely, right? It's not likely that that can happen. But I can always work. Is what I'm doing today, is this action going to take a brick off the wall or put one on the wall? Trust isn't built in big dramatic gestures. It's built in small, consistent moments, one brick at a time. So some actions for relationship management could be, leading with curiosity and conflict. This is really tough to do. Instead of assuming, ask something like, help me understand. I'm not quite grasping your perspective. It's different than mine, but I really want to understand it. That simple shift opens space for dialogue and prevents things from escalating too quickly. Or you could set out to recognize emotional moments and ripples in a team member. When you acknowledge someone's feelings, even briefly, you show them that they matter, and that helps trust grow. Or it could be as simple as being more transparent about your intent. Transparency builds psychological safety, and when people understand your why, they're more likely to engage with confidence and clarity. All right, that brings us to the end of our core 4 review. Now we're going to step into creating our 7-day action plan. We're going to quickly run through this, but first we're going to listen to the core 4, Dr. Goldman telling us about building EQ. FYI, he's going to ask you to do something with your arms in this video. If you're so inclined, I'd invite you to do so. Usually get a few bits of laughter with this. I know it was weird for me at first, so let's see how it treats you.
Unlike IQ, which barely budges over the course of our life, emotional intelligence can change. It's learned and learnable. And it's learned and learnable at any point in life. Emotional intelligence is not one thing. It's like going to a doctor for a physical. You get your lipids and your good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. You get 15 data points. Emotional intelligence is a set of abilities, and each of us has strengths and limitations across that spectrum. So if you want to improve your emotional intelligence, see where you need to improve first. One of the common colds of emotional intelligence is poor listening. We think about what we want to say and we don't really listen to the other person, and we cut them off, we interrupt. Let's say you wanted to change that. This is a basic of empathy, listening well. So if you want to learn to be better at empathy, you might say, my habit, and I've done it thousands of times, is cutting people off and interrupting. I'm going to make the effort to do it differently. I'm going to listen to the person out, say what I think they mean, and then say what I think. That is a different behavioral sequence. And it comes down to the basics of what we call neuroplasticity, how the brain changes with repeated experience. And that's what underlies habit change. It's a little like crossing your arms in a new way. Cross your arms in the old way, please. Now cross them with the other arm on top. That feels uncomfortable. That's what it's like to change a habit. So with listening, you have to first make an intentional effort, might feel uncomfortable, but as you persist, it gets more and more comfortable until finally it's an automatic habit. That will stay with you for years.
So let's quickly recap the 4 core skills of emotional intelligence and frame their labels as sort of questions or concepts we can ask ourselves. Self-awareness, what am I feeling? How am I reacting? This is the ability to notice what you're feeling in the moment without judgment. It starts by observing your emotions, spotting patterns, and staying present even when it's uncomfortable. Self-management, how am I responding? It means responding with intention. It's the pause before you react, the visualization of a better outcome, and the habit of resetting whenever you need to. Social awareness, what are others feeling? I'm reading the room. This is tuning into unspoken cues, listening to understand, and being open to others' perspectives. And finally, last but not least, how do I lead with empathy? Relationship management is where EQ comes into focus for leadership, leading with curiosity, acknowledging emotions, and being intentional about how you connect. These are the 4 core skills and foundations of EQ. Let's go ahead and look at our action plan. We're going to now work on, real quickly, I'm going to run through this action plan form that we've created for you. And we're going to try to help you understand, maybe build some motivation for using it. It gives you a clear way to turn EQ insights into daily habits. So what we're looking for here is sort of that daily habit thing, right? First step is to define a daily focus skill. Each day, choose just one EQ domain, like self-awareness or relationship management, and pick out one small practical action you'll commit to that day. So I want you to think about that. It's like, sometimes it's going to be one interaction, from our menu of choices. Other times it might be every time I'm in this situation today, I'm going to choose to respond with this, right? The next step, reflect on your experience. Take 2 minutes each day to jot down quick observations, what you tried, how it went, and what you noticed about your own responses or interactions. This may seem like a step. I don't need to do that. I was there, right? Why do I need to reflect on it? This is part of that neuroplasticity moment, right? We're trying to give ourselves like a reward. How did this workout go today? And it also helps us reset for the next day. So reviewing our reflections, based on those insights, you're going to select a next action step. The goal isn't perfection, it's consistency and steady improvement. So let's quickly walk through a sample week over the next few slides so you can see what it might look like. So day one, we're starting off with self-awareness. On this day, let's say you select pause and label your emotions at 3 different times today. So 3 times today, when you find yourself in an emotional situation, you're not judging yourself. You're not trying to, there's not psychoanalysis going on here. I feel this way because of this, right? That's it. So all you would do is jot down 3 times, what triggered me today is another way of thinking that. 7-day action plan. So using the 7-second pause for the 7-day action plan, got a lot of sevens in here. 7-second pause before responding to a frustrating email or a situation. And again, that powerful question you're going to ask yourself, what outcome do I want from this? That is useful, and by the way, in a lot of situations, but definitely after the 7 seconds, okay, what do I really want here? Day 3, we may just watch for nonverbal cues in a meeting or conversation. Try to note one moment where tone or body language said more than the words. Day 4, this is where we're getting into sort of that interaction. So we're now going to start working on our relationships by giving a piece of feedback with curiosity and empathy. You might start with something like, can I check in on something I've noticed, right? So this is going to be in an area with somebody we trust, someone who we feel is open to these kinds of interactions. But practicing giving advice or observations with empathy is incredibly powerful, and it's a skill you really want to develop. Day 5. In this example for day 5 and 6, we're going to pretend, we're going to revisit self and social awareness because we're going to pretend that we took the EQ assessment and these were our 2 lowest areas. So I'm going to circle back to these simply because, hey, this is an area where I might need a little extra work. So we might ask for feedback. So now we're stepping it up even more. I'm going to now ask, I'm going to be vulnerable and ask for feedback. What's something I do that's helpful and something I could improve on, right? So asking both sides of the spectrum. By the way, by doing that, this is one of those things where people might be reluctant to give you true advice or true comments about how you're behaving. So if you give them an opportunity to open with something positive, that gives them that feeling like, okay, this isn't just a picking on you kind of exercise, right? We want to allow them to say something positive, but we're also giving them space to give us something we need to work on. Day 6, we might practice active listening in a one-on-one or team setting. And then as part of that practice, remember, we're going to reflect back what we hear. You don't do it every time, right? That's not exactly how that would work in the normal settings. But trying to find times where I'm going to listen, reflect back. Did I hear this correctly? I think this is what you said. Check me if I'm wrong. And then day 7, for day 7, for the first few weeks at least, we suggest you make day 7 about the action of reflection. This helps us build momentum by recognizing our gains. The brain repeats what you reward it with, basically. So as we give those rewards for having done the action, reflecting on some of the things that might have changed, set aside 5 minutes to journal or write a few sentences answering this question. What has changed this week in terms of how I think, feel, or show up at work? Maybe it's a deeper awareness of your reactions, or maybe you paused before responding. Either way, you want to reflect on those and kind of honor the fact that you went to that trouble and you received that kind of payoff, frankly. Another option is to use the handy dandy weekly review form provided in your action planner. It's going to ask you 3 different questions. What was your biggest win of the week? The EQ skill that improved the most in your opinion, and what EQ domain you want to focus on in the next week and why. So whatever surfaced for you during that week, capture it, because naming the change is what helps it stick. That is identifying that rut, right? So you can repeat those actions that you have positive feedback and positive outcomes from. Remember, this isn't a finish line. This is a foundation. So you're building slowly. Right? You're building slowly, one little positive action at a time. And the ever famous Dr. Covey, who we use a lot of Dr. Covey's work, he reminds us that knowledge is only potential impact. It becomes real when we actually apply it. The simple tools in your 7-day action planner are the bridge from I get it to I live it. And each action is intentionally bite-sized because small reps done consistently beat heroic bursts you'll never repeat. Our challenge to you is to try the planner for just 1 week. Give every day a single focused rep. If you miss a day, do not worry about it. Just like the gym, go back, just go back. Pivot, don't quit. Momentum is built on showing up again and again, not by being flawless. So 1 week of practice, 1 page at a time, then decide if this kind of sharper interactions and this positive activities are worth another 7 days for you. So that is all we have for you guys today. We do have a feedback form, and if you want to submit for attendance, this actually goes into the system, but the feedback is on the left and attendance is on the right. That is all we have for you today. I'm going to pause here. If anybody has any questions or thoughts, I know Caitlin has taken, I think, a few questions. We can go ahead and move into an open Q&A.
Okay, I'll give folks a minute or 2 to get these submitted, just so you've got those on the docket. If you need help, please let us know. And then we will dive into the questions. We did get some from the assessments that came in. And then Avery, I did just see your comment as well. Once we're done with the QR process, we'll move back to that slide. Alan, we had a request to go back to one of the slides for the action plan. So we'll give folks a minute or 2 to get things set up logistically, and then we will move into the open forum of Q&A.
Caitlin, you tell me when I should go back. I'll just sit here hovering over the back button.
You're okay. We'll sit and smile for a quick moment. And then if anyone needs anything, just feel free to send me a private chat. I can also send this to you while we're working in the background. So we'll do one more quick minute and then we'll move back to Avery's comment first. We'll start there. And then I've got about 4 questions that have been submitted. But if you do have other questions, things that you felt like we have not addressed, things you were hoping that we were talking about today, particularly in an HR capacity, please feel free to either throw it into the main forum of the chat, or if you feel more comfortable asking this in an anonymous way, you can always send me a private chat and I will feed those to Alan.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back. There we go. Watch for nonverbal cues in a meeting or conversation. All right. I see Angela. Would it be possible for this presentation to be sent? Yes, we can send a PDF of it.
And I do know that today's session was also being recorded. Deanna, thank you for setting that up for us. We do know it is being recorded as well.
Yeah, Malia will get the slides posted and the recording posted by early next week, so you can watch it again.
Great. We'll have those QR codes in there for folks too, in case you need those.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move into the Q&A portion. Again, if you would like to stay on for this portion, you are more than welcome. We always encourage folks to stay on. You may learn something, you might have an opportunity to hear from someone else. If you would like to leave though, you are more than welcome to do that. We respect your time and space for being here. So Alan, I'm gonna go ahead and kick us off with our very first question. And if there are things that you'd like me to chime into as well, please feel free. But otherwise, I'll direct these to you. So our first question did come in from the Qualtrics assessment. Can emotional intelligence be situational? Can you score in some areas as higher one time and then lower the next time? And also, can you change throughout time?
So kind of a two-part thing. One is, yeah, I mean, it's a self-assessment. And again, the instrument that we used, I'm sure there are maybe more expansive, deeper EQ assessments out there. The one that we utilize today is very similar to the one from the EQ 2.0 book. I've taken them both. Very, very similar. It's really trying to find out where we are in those four quadrants, right? So the answer to that question is yes. I believe it would be possible for you because it is kind of how am I feeling, right? However, the second part is really the one I want to key on because the answer to that is absolutely yes. You can work on various areas. And when you think about the reason we talk about it, I use the gym analogy, maybe it's not the best, but the idea of, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at one type of exercise, but I'm not good at this other one. I'm good at running, but I'm not good at biking. Or if you want to use something different, right? I want to get better at one of these. Well, we're going to do things that attend to that specific type of EQ area, right? So, for instance, if I'm low in self-reflection, I might lean more of my exercises towards, maybe 4 of the days I'm going to do a self-reflection. What am I feeling? How am I acting? What's triggering me today? And keeping track of those over time. It isn't any one of those. Going to the gym for one day does not turn you into a bodybuilder. This is the same thing, right? So it is the constant practice of it. But the reason we talk about using small steps is because it can feel overwhelming, right? You don't, when you start going to the gym, you don't go for 8 hours, right? Nobody would advise you to do that unless they're being paid by the hour. So at the end of the day, the answer is yes, you can work on the idea of the assessment isn't necessarily to say, you're absolutely definitively chiseled in stone, weak in this area. It is just an indicator in that moment. Okay, this is an area I might want to tend to focus. I'm not going to skip leg day, right? Just because it's the most uncomfortable thing for me. That's an area I need to improve in. So I'm going to set out little things I can do to keep chipping away at that, right? Making that stronger over time. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Alan. One more thing I also wanted to add to that comment, Alan, I think is really, really interesting is the season of life that you're in could also shift things around for you, right? So if you're in a really complicated season or like a new chapter of your life, I think your EQ might, this is just in my experience, in my opinion, might shift even more, right? So if you're a parent for the first time, if you're newly married, newly divorced, you're in a different season, I think that also, your life experiences do have an aspect of that EQ fluctuation, kind of those different chapters, those different seasons. So I did want to add that to the comment as well, in case that is helpful for the person. I don't know what kind of their life circumstances are, but I do think that's something to also consider just in the context of your life and the different chapters of life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true.
Okay, so next question is how do we train our brains to have more confidence in ourselves and our own abilities?
That feels like a coaching question. So we do offer executive coaching through the L&D department. Training yourself, we have courses and stuff on imposter syndrome. That I don't know if that's exactly what you're referring to, but I can tell you, imposter syndrome is also something that we think is just us, just me. I'm the only one here that is lacking confidence in myself. Everyone around me is just marching confidently into the day. No, they're not. In fact, more often than not, there are a lot of people around you that are experiencing imposter syndrome of some type in some area of their life. It may not be in their job, maybe it's in their home life, maybe it's in, I don't know, public speaking, whatever it is. There's an area where they're like, I can't do it. When I came to campus as a seasoned senior executive, getting up in front of hundreds of people, talking all the time, but they all worked for me. That's different than 100 people that I don't know. I don't know anybody. So I was super nervous. Caitlin, I told Caitlin early on, I'm very nervous about getting up in front of people. And so I had to work on that. I had imposter syndrome. It wasn't that I got stupider or I couldn't speak. I literally just put that all in my head. So if you're interested in executive coaching, we do offer that. I'm an executive coach. Debbie Lammers is also an executive coach on our team. And there are a number of executive coaches around campus. That to me is one of those things that you might benefit from working with someone over time who can really help you really engage in those sort of small exercises. Kind of like this emotional intelligence thing. They're not quite in the same vein, but we advise the same thing. Don't don't try to, I'm going to change myself overnight and be the most confident person. Probably not going to happen, right? So, but lots of little steps over time. It is neuroplasticity based as well, right? You're going to teach yourself. I taught myself to not be nervous. Now, I did it through various things. A meditation app, which I like to. Caitlin's nodding her head. I advise a lot of people to use it. Insight Timer is what it's called, and they have courses in there. A 3-session course on overcoming your fear of public speaking. That's what it took for me. Period. They taught me some logical things in there. My emotional response of being afraid is exactly the same as my emotional response of being excited. So now before I start talking, I think I'm so excited to teach these people today. I'm so excited for my opportunity to help them learn something new. Isn't this great? Your brain is like, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. So I know that doesn't quite answer the question, but again, on the L&D website, if you go to where you can look at our courses down to the select a custom course, in that you can pick coaching and we can have a talk.
Great. Thanks, Alan. One of the things I think has also been really helpful, again, I also am going to echo Alan here, the Insight Timer. If you are looking for a free app, highly recommend it. Alan first told me about it probably towards the tail end of last year. And I have seen some just things within myself internally that I feel different about just through doing a constant and a consistent meditative practice. So would highly encourage it. Again, we don't receive, funding. We don't receive any
Yes,
sort of, this is not a promotional video. Yes, these are just things that we as individuals that are in these types of roles, we try to be aware of lots of resources, and we also try to practice the tools alongside of you all. So when we come into sessions like this, we can speak to our own experience, our own lived journeys, if you will. One of the things I think is also really helpful when we think about the confidence building aspect. Alan, you spoke a little bit about this earlier on. I thought that was a really powerful tool, is the reframing of negative self-talk, right? And I think that's something, I know you spoke about it earlier. I don't know if you want to hone into that or just recapitalize on that for the group, but I think that has such an impact when we think about confidence, when we think about growth mindset, feeling like I can't do this, just those simple reframes in negative self-talk. Do you have anything else that you'd like to expand upon that might be helpful for the group today?
Yeah, and it's one that frankly I practice as well. So it's when I'm experiencing those moments of doubt in myself. We have a tendency, negativity bias. Humans have a negativity bias, right? So we always go there first. You probably heard the data about, the things we worry about, something like 85% of them never happen. Think about all the energy we spend to have something where 85% of the time it doesn't come true, right? So one of the tools I've been taught and have used is whenever a negative thought pops into your head, and this might be one of these small exercises. So you're right, Caitlin, I apologize. This is actually, it is connected in there. Is to rephrase exactly the thoughts you just had, only talk about it like it's going to go absolutely amazing. It's going to be the best thing ever. This is going to be the best speech I have ever given in my life. They're going to love it. They're going to lift me on their shoulders and carry me through the room. That is just as likely as the torches and pitchforks coming out and them attacking you on the stage, right? So we catastrophize in one way and it's super easy and everything seems logical. Like that's absolutely possible. 85% of the time that's not going to happen. So let's do something on the other end. And that act of sort of point by point, sort of counterpointing your negative thought with a positive thought that's equally as powerful. That takes a little practice. And if you're spiraling, it can be a lot of work, right? Oh yeah, well here's another one. So stick with it though. That one of the reasons I got into Insight Timer was my training as a coach. I took it through the University of Texas, and it was actual a 1 year college courses taught by college professors, and we had a neuroscientist who taught us all one whole course just on the neuroplasticity elements, neuroscience and coaching. And in that lesson, I was like, okay, it was the wagon rut thing. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. Meditation, huh? Never really given it a shot. Now I do it 5 times a week at least. So, and it does help. Sorry, hopefully that.
Yeah, I think it's great. Thank you so much for, and again, I think some of this too, it's nice to hear real people's experience with that, with these kind of things, because it can make it feel more real life. It can
Yeah.
give you an insight into how a real person is using some of these tools, using some of these behaviors. And again, all of us are in a different journey, a different starting place, but understanding that and knowing and hearing it from someone else, I do think can be really powerful. So for those that we had a couple folks actually ask about confidence. So hopefully that was a helpful reminder and some things that you can focus in on. Our next question was, how do I best develop skills for relating to others? Now, I don't know if you want to refer to the action plan in this portion, Alan, or not. I think it's probably really alluding to the social awareness actions, but also perhaps in the relationship management space as well. But they're really interested in just diving into the development skills of how do I relate to others.
Again, there's a million different scenarios. So knowing the scenario you're talking about would be helpful. But generally speaking, you know, leading with curiosity. We have a tendency, especially in a world where we're all, everybody's wearing 5 hats, or the work never stops. There's no breathing. It's just holding your breath the whole time. It can be really tempting to want to want to fast forward to the end. And so we do two things. We don't listen actively, and we have a tendency to start forming our response before they're done with the question or their statement. So I'm already thinking about what I'm going to say because we're going to speed this thing along, right? I'm going to get to the conclusion. That is not the best practice, right? The best practice would be in relating with others. And we talk about a few other things in terms of, if you look at these exercises. I use the one where I want you to tell me something that I'm doing pretty well and something I could work on. That exercise is specific, and it is meant to have those two balanced moments. The flip side of that is that other people also can benefit from that kind of bracketing. But no matter what, people do appreciate it when you listen to them. I use this example because I would appreciate hearing good things about me and having it framed with something that I could work on by somebody that I trust. And so, reflecting that to other people, like other people want, a lot of times, if you want it, chances are other people, they kind of want the same kind of thing. It varies by person, of course. Some people are very private and I don't really want to share and I don't really care to hear you share. So, I know I'm speaking to the choir here in HR, but in terms of interacting with other people, that leading with curiosity, listening, pausing, reflecting, hey, I heard your point was like this. I know I tend to lean into sort of conflict conversations when it may not be that at all. It may just be if you're talking about relating to others in terms of, when I go to a conference, I want to meet more people. I have a tendency to sort of linger over around the edges. Um, Shout out to my relators. I'm a Clifton Strengths coach as well, so there's the woo and the relator combo. Uh, that's another thing I could go into, go down a different path, but yeah, I have that. For me, I would choose exercises in the relationship management zone. I would choose exercises that have me doing some action that makes someone else feel appreciative of that interaction, right? Can I tell you something that you do really well? Do you mind if I offer, an observation that whenever you're in a meeting, we're always on time, and whatever it is, we always get a laugh. You're always light in the mood, whatever it is. This isn't about slinging, compliments around. It is truly observing and finding those opportunities to say something positive to somebody, something that it's genuine. You've genuine every time you're in the room, I laugh, and I really appreciate you lightening the mood. That kind of thing is so powerful. And you can Google that too. That's one of those things those are the kinds of things that help build relationships and build trust, because you're willing to open yourself up to giving compliments on observations.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Alan, for that. And I did add a note too to the chat in reference to what Alan's speaking to. We probably highlight pages 5 and 6 of that action plan that does speak to a little bit more of those concrete actions you can take within both awareness of others and also relationship management skills. And then our last question that we've had come in was really around the self-management piece. And again, these are big, broad questions. There's not a whole lot of context to it, but essentially what the person is asking is, what are some ideas for self-management? How can I improve in this space? So again, Alan, if you want to talk to the action plan, I'll add some page numbers in there, or anything else that you'd like to share with the group.
Excellent. I mean, that's a great question, and it pairs with the sort of the self-reflection piece. That's why I talk about that being so foundational, know thyself kind of thing. And it is in the, if I want to control my reactions, it's why we talk about what's the thing that sets me off? What are the things that just get that knee-jerk reaction from me? It can be any number of things. It can be I find certain things very funny, right? But maybe inappropriately so, and I laugh until I can't breathe, whatever it is. So it can be something that could seem relatively positive, but if you're trying to head off a reaction, right? If you're trying to manage your reactions, it starts with understanding what are the situations that get me into that reaction. And then the next step is, so that understanding where it comes from, the next step is what do I do about when I arrive there? It is hard to know how to react to something flying at me if I can't quite understand what it is, right? So the idea of I'm going to design an action that also comes to mind. And the more I practice it, the more I'm creating a new rut. So when that thing happens, I have a different reaction, and it isn't the old one that I used to not want, right? That's a negative reaction. I don't like that. So I want to do something different. So it's about repetitive action, observe, try to do something different. For me, and you won't be 100%, by the way, that's okay. But every time you're successful, reflect on it, reward your brain, and you're going to start moving towards that reaction more frequently. For me, you may be experiencing it at this very moment. I tend to over-explain things. So I have several Clifton strengths that come together and form the perfect storm of an over-explainer. And so for me, I've adopted the action of stopping when I'm starting to see the eyes gloss over. Is this too much? Have I answered your question? Would you like more? Right. So I do that now, especially with my family. I love history, and when my kids ask me a history question, good night, literally for them. So hopefully that answers the question without being too long.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate the extra context on that one. And I did add to the chat, if you are looking for some self-management activities, again, we do have some listed in your action plan that might be helpful for you. Those are going to be on page 4. So that was the list of questions that we did receive from the Qualtrics-based assessment. We will include those QR codes in the PowerPoint PDF that will be sent out. So in case you did not capture those when you were here in the session, we will make sure that you get a copy of that with the recording. Malia, thank you so much for doing that and editing that for us. We will open the floor for any other questions, comments, anything else that you all would like to share in this HR space. We've got 30 minutes extra if you would like to chime in with anything else. Otherwise, we thank you all so much for being here, for participating, for being so active, asking very thoughtful questions, and a big shout out for Alan. Shout out for Alan for leading today's session and being able to address these questions of curiosity on the fly. We appreciate your time and your energy.
And thank you to Caitlin for being just an amazing, all the logistics in the background, just perfect.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of
Thanks,
your
everybody.
week.
Great afternoon. Thank you.
All right. Stop sharing. Okay.
Last minute questions? All right. Well, thanks, you guys, for the presentation. That was really good. I think we got a lot of good feedback from that group. So we really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. Go HR.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.
Yes.
Bye.